Okay guys, welcome back to another video. Skipped last week, wasn't feeling too great, but one topic that I had to absolutely speak about today was I think a topic that everybody's seen on the internet. It's been all over. It's probably the biggest conversation point in automotive, or specifically F1, if you haven't found out already. I guess, in recent history, which is around Lewis Hamilton moving to Ferrari. Now, why is it such a big thing? I guess for many F1 fans that know already, or maybe for those who don't, Lewis has had a very long term standing relationship with Mercedes. You can argue and say that, it's where he's built his world championship reputation, where he's basically built, I would say, in recent history at least, Mercedes to where they are today to be a really dominant competitor. And for a period of time, he was totally dominant, right, in the Mercedes vehicle. So he's got a long-standing history with Mercedes and with Toto, you know, spanning back more than a decade. We know that in recent years he's struggled to come back to those winning ways. We know that Mercedes has given him a subpar car. We know the domination that Max Verstappen has been having with Red Bull. Ferrari is also sort of making a resurgence in recent years. And I guess, you look at Hamilton from a racing perspective, or among his peers, he is getting on the older side. So he's older, not as old as some of the other guys that are currently racing, right? But they aren't sort of current world champions, or you would rule them out of winning a world championship um, in today's time, right? Um, so obviously, for example, you've got Vettel, you've got other guys in the grid as well that are champions, but they're in less competitive teams or less competitive cars, and they're not necessarily on the forefront of winning the championship. So I think it's interesting because it places Lewis in a situation where there's been rumors of him retiring in the years past, especially when Mercedes gave him a subpar car. He couldn't compete. He didn't kind of win, obviously, and everyone was like, will he retire, will he retire? And Sebastian Vettel said that everybody's a Ferrari fan, even if you're a Mercedes guy, right? Everybody's a Ferrari fan. And why this is so interesting is that if you had to back a team now, if you're Lewis and you've been dominant in Mercedes, you're now not at a point where you can be competitive, and if it is your last ditch attempt at winning a world championship, where do you go? And Ferrari is the one that answers all the questions, right? It's the dream team to work for, it's the dream team to have driven for. From a historic perspective, what Ferrari represents as a brand in the automotive sort of legacy. It's an aspirational brand, right, that everybody wants to aspire to, and what they stand for, particularly in racing and F1. And we've seen them this last couple of seasons competing for second place um, in terms of constructor championships. They've got arguably, or they've had arguably, some of the best talent in the sport as well, with Charles and Carlos. Um, and so, they've been let down by strategy, they've been let down by internal decision making at Ferrari. But if Ferrari is able to deliver a competitive car to Red Bull, to get Lewis back on that edge, and this has given Lewis some motivation to go after and be hungry again for the championship, it could be Lewis's last ditch attempt at getting a world championship again. So it's a very, very exciting. It's huge news in the F1 world, right? This is not taking place in this year, 2024. It will be next year in 2025. Now, a lot to discuss. I think everybody's jumping ahead to 2025 already, and fair enough. We're all excited to see Lewis race for Ferrari and what that means. But it also puts a lot of pressure on everybody this year in 2024. And why I say that is that, first and foremost, it's Lewis's last year with Mercedes. Toto has already come out and he's basically said, look, there's no blood lost or no hard feelings. They've still got a very good personal relationship. He's been with Mercedes for a long period of time. So I still believe Toto, in the professional that he is going to want to give Lewis the best car that he can in 2024 and give him the best opportunity to succeed. Um, Obviously, the Mercedes would want that in either way. So I think they're going to go very hard. I think a lot of pressure is on Ferrari. They've got Lewis signing up in what can be or what is the biggest deal in recent history. They have to perform. They cannot be making silly strategy mistakes. They cannot have a car that is subpar. They really need to step up the game, and they're going to want to step up the game and iron out all those little issues where you have a world championship um, driver and winner coming into the team. You want to clean up your act, so there's going to be a lot of pressure on Ferrari to perform this year. And then the same thing with Red Bull, right? Obviously Max has been dominating. The pressure's on them to keep that up and to keep performing, especially with these big changes coming up in time to come, right? So very interesting, very exciting. I think a couple of talking points, Carlos Sainz, where does he go to from here? What's written for him? I do feel bad for Carlos. He's, I think, underappreciated. Like a lot of drivers, he's sort of the rock or very steady driver, right? Doesn't rock the boat. Very reliable, very dependable driver. I guess there's a couple of options. The first one is Mercedes, right? They don't have a driver with Lewis going there. Would it be kind of say, straight swap for Lewis? So Carlos will go over to Mercedes. You've also got an option in Aston Martin, right, that he could go to. And then you've got, some other teams, for example, Audi joining in 2026. Would they look at a new driver? But that's still, another 2 years away. So I think for the immediate future, maybe he would, sign up at one of those teams in the interim. But I don't think he'd have difficulty finding a spot. He's a Ferrari driver. He's won podiums. He's really, really good, top talent. I think he'd get along very well with someone like Russell if he had to go to Mercedes. Bringing dependability and reliability to the team. On Lewis's side with Charles, it's going to be interesting to see the relationship they have and the way they have going forward. It's very exciting, right? I think one of the big things that everyone is talking about is Lewis Hamilton. For the most part, I think everybody's heard of. You can argue whether he's a really famous athlete that I like to call, whether people know the sport or not, they know about them. So Michael Jordan, whether people know or don't know basketball, you would have heard of Michael Jordan. The same thing with Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson, right? You may not follow boxing, but you would have heard the name. Roger Federer in golf. You've got Michael Schumacher in F1. And is Lewis becoming that household brand name? Not only in F1, but he's got a lot of other charity work. He's gone into fashion and gone into the fashion industry, or like David Beckham in football, right, or Cristiano or Messi. So I think he's become one of the more noticeable athletes in modern time, and I think that is what has such big allure. Um, and also the contract, right? You're talking about $100 million contract. You're talking about multi-million-dollar contribution to one of his charities, and the brand ambassador, right? He got to be a brand ambassador for Ferrari and represent them. And you look at, again, debating on the day that this was announced. Ferrari's stock went up. I think it was double digit, right? So between, I guess, 9 to 12%, 11%. Which was a huge increase in market cap, right? Like 10 odd billion dollars. So you could argue that his fees and his contract and what the Ferrari had to put on the table to get him has already been paid off, right? And that's now a year before he's even starting to race for them, right? So you start talking about building the brand equity and in 2025 what he's going to bring to the table. And if he comes off a very successful 2024 season and he starts off 2025 very well, it's a lot of money, but I think Ferrari would have got a bargain, right? But I think it works well. There's good synergies there because Ferrari would have got a bargain, but it's also giving Lewis the opportunity to live out his dream and to go after the championship one more time. So very, very exciting year that's going to be coming up now with F1 as we ramp up and build for that. So looking forward to that. Also, taking a drive. I was staying basically opposite Albert Park, and they've started erecting all the grandstands and getting ready for F1 next month. So yeah, the fever's building, and looking forward to what this season has to offer. That's pretty much all I really wanted to chat about from this week. The only other thing I saw was around the new G80, G82, M3, and M4. Um, I'm not sure if it's the full LCI, but somewhat of an LCI, so some minor updates. They've got new headlights, new, sort of screen going across the interior, which I still really like. I know a lot of people are not a fan of them. I think it just modernizes the interior with those, if you've got that full carbon interior, it looks really good. I think the big update for me is on the rear, right? It's kind of got these, I don't know what you call them, almost like shoestring lights. That's on the higher model. I think it's a CSL. That's now coming down into the base model. So I think that's really going to look good. I think it's going to make the car stand out a lot more. And I think it's a really good improvement, right? It's also got a bump in horsepower, so 20 odd horsepower, not significant difference, but yeah, looking forward to seeing those hit the road. I am a fan of them now. I've seen a couple of Tourings running around, and I think they look stunning in person. And with this upgrades of the tail lights, the headlights, and the interior, I still think it's a really, really good option. Probably the best sports car that you can get on the market today, right? Um, Bearing in mind the C63 that's coming, that is not a V8 anymore, but from a driving perspective, definitely M3 and M4 up there. So that's pretty much it. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch up on the next video. Cheers.